Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me tonight is going to be Thomas Weston. And one of the big things that I asked him to come on here and talk about was a book that he's had out now for a while that caught my eye at Amazon.com, titled Mysteries of the Multiverse and Mind. However, since that time, it's come to my attention that he's also got a newer, more recent book out that is, if I'm not mistaken, and he can correct me on this, I think titled something to do with the headhunters. I can't remember the exact title because I don't have it in front of me, but I thought it would be a good idea for him to also have a chance to tell y'all a little something. Oh, yeah, the book is called Headhunters. I just opened it up in the email. He can have a chance to tell y'all a little something about that book while we're here, because you might be interested in that as well. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him and give him a chance to tell you, how he got interested in writing books about this particular genre. So, Thomas, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, Royce. Thank you very much. And by the way, my novel Headhunters I've already pulled due to some outraged people, and in the process right now of re-editing, and I'll be putting it back up on Amazon shortly. I've been writing for many years, and when I first began writing, as I was telling someone recently, I didn't even have a computer. The first book I wrote was with a pen and paper, and later I got a computer and tried to learn what a mouse was and a keyboard was and so forth. So presently, now this book, Mysteries of the Multiverse and Mind, I wrote back in 2007. And this was an outgrowth, really, of metaphysical groups and metaphysical studies that I had been involved with for many years and still am. And my interest has always been, aside from just writing mystery novels and so forth, metaphysical subjects, because I really do feel that we are living in a universe that we know very little about. And I certainly am not putting myself out, Royce, as an expert, because the older I get and the more I think I learn, the more I realize how very little I actually do know. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in that boat. You know, you start out as a young kid growing up and you're learning so much, and then you get to be an adolescent and you know everything, and then you get into older years and realize you thought you knew everything.
Yeah, the time I knew everything was when I was about, I guess 19 or 20. I had all the answers. I don't have very many anymore. I have grasped by what I think are a few principles, but as far as feeling like an expert, I'm not. I'm just, I feel like everyone is on what I would call the path, and we're at various stages on the path. And I think as long as we're here on planet Earth, we probably aren't as advanced as we think we are, because when we get really advanced on the path, we probably won't have to come back to this place anymore. At least that's my hope.
Well, I can see that one. I would definitely like to hope not either, especially not with the crime rate we got going on. It's pretty bad. You have to worry just to walk down to the corner store.
Absolutely. And I was telling someone today, I used to have a kind of a gold ring I wore on my finger. I said, I'm not going to wear that anymore, except my wedding band, but I'm not going to wear that ring anymore. They probably chop my finger off to get the ring. So, yeah, it's a bit disturbing, but on the other hand, it's not totally unexpected, because if you study the history of nations, every nation has climbed up to a pinnacle, and then inevitably the decline comes and you're on your way down. And personally, I think that in this nation, we're on our way down, and I don't know of any way to reverse it. But anyway, we take it day by day.
I think that's pretty much all any of us can do. But about your book, I was over at Amazon.com, and I saw your book when I was looking up Mysteries of the Multiverse, because I've had, you're the third author on this topic, and each one of you has been very unique. One of them had a scientific approach to the mysteries of the multiverse. The other one was listing things that most people don't know about paranormal related, UFO and stuff that goes on in the multiverse. And you're covering it from a metaphysical standpoint. And I thought, well, here you got 3 authors with 3 different aspects on one topic. I just had to call you or contact you and see if you could come and, talk about yours over here. But before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that your website is HTTP. Well, okay, you don't put a www on this in here because it's a subdomain, but it's tomweston.champ.tripod.com, and I'll be posting that into the chat room. You can also Google, I think, Tom Weston Literary Productions and Consulting and get it on the Google search results. Am I right about that, Thomas?
Yes, I think that should bring it up, and it's, I like to go by Tom, but officially it's Thomas Weston, so I was quite amazed some time back to find out how many Thomas Westons there are. Rather disappointed, too, because I thought I was so unique, and I find I'm not, so.
Okay,
yeah, you can Google it, Thomas Weston, and my website that you just gave will have links to my print books and also to some of the e-books.
Right, because you're also a literary agent over there, right?
No, I'm not an agent, but I do consulting with,
okay.
I guess you call them wannabe authors, people that are, that have a desire to write and really don't quite know where to begin. So I try to give them some help along that line.
I got you.
Just consulting.
Also, before we get too far into this, I want to remind everybody, our call-in number's 832-632-7904, because I know some people are listening at Shoutcast, or they're catching this in the archives at YouTube or somewhere. And this is where you can reach me during the show live and ask the guests questions. And you can also join us here at www.paranormalpalace.com and catch the show live. And membership is free. It lets you into the chat room, and you can also sign up for the newsletter while you're at it. So, Thomas, we've already talked about what got you interested into this here book. We know you got a metaphysical approach, so I think a logical question at this point might be, on this here book, is this kind of like a blending of metaphysical or spiritual with science?
Not really with science so much, although of course, whatever your definition of science is, this is more along the line of just having your understanding opened to spiritual ideas and principles. I think the biggest, I guess you'd call it revelation I have had personally was the, well, I forgot it in the beginning of the book, the non-existence of time. That's been life-altering for me to realize that there really is not any past or future tangibly except in our memories. The only thing that exists is our this present instant. In fact, when the show is over, it won't exist anymore except in records that you're making. Thank you for that. But it'll be consigned to our memory data banks. And so it is with all of history. If you removed all of the collective memory records and everything, there wouldn't be anything back in the past. It's just gone. So
that's really very profound, because that's something, the kind of thing, if you ask me, that almost everybody knows, but yet they don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that doesn't really hit you till you actually just kind of bring it up in your face there.
Yeah, it has to open up for you. I will sometimes tell someone of the non-existence of time, and they'll not say, "Oh yeah," but they don't get it. You have to actually see that we're just having instant by instant living, and that's a big one. It's a real big one. It's been life-altering for me. So the book itself is primarily just I would call them metaphysical principles, things like correspondence and vibration and rhythm and cause and effect, prana, and just the general principles of the universe. And then, of course, there are some things that we can use our minds for if we decide to think occasionally, such as creative visualization and positive affirmation. So this little book is really not so much scientific as it is coming from a metaphysical, kind of a spiritual perspective, I think.
Sort of like similar to, say, alchemy?
Well, actually, the alchemy that people sometimes read about, where the alchemists back in history were trying to turn lead into gold, the real underlying reason for real alchemy was to change the human being himself from the gross lead of our animal nature into the gold of a higher being. That's what real alchemy was about. It was self-change. So it would be nice, I guess, with the price of gold the way it is, if you could go down and get some lead and change it into gold, take it down to the pawn shop. But real alchemy has to do with the individual changing himself. That's what real alchemy is about.
Well, I got to tell you, Thomas, the man's passed away now, but there was a man named Lawrence Gardner. Now, he didn't talk about the turning lead into gold like that so many hear about traditionally, but he had claimed to run into a fella that had run into what they call white gold powder that, when heated, would disappear and lose half its weight, if not all of its weight, and then when cooled would reappear again. And I was wondering if you ever heard of that.
Not specifically, but we know that everything in the universe, including ourselves, is composed of energy, which is constantly changing. It's changing constantly. So changes can come, but they come because of changes in the energy that is behind the molecular structure of things. So I am not familiar with that particular example, but certainly wouldn't doubt it.
So, coming at it from that perspective, that would mean that actual teleportation, which they have recently discovered does work, is a doable thing. It just ain't on a large scale yet, because we're also molecular and made up of atoms that could be disassembled and reassembled, much like a jigsaw puzzle, and pass through like a light beam or something, right?
I think so. Because the real us, the real you and the real me, live in this body. That's why I might say, well, I'm thinking. Well, what's thinking is really this computer that I've got in my head, but the real me is inside this sheath, you might say, and that is the part of us that will someday just step out of the sheath, and we will hopefully step into a better one. But there is such a thing as you might say, our astral body, and that astral body can separate from this body. And this accounts in many cases, I think, for some of the cases of bilocation, where I'm here and then I might be at the same time in your radio studio or whatever. I'm not, but I mean, it's just the idea is that there's actually a double that we have.
I've heard tell that the ancient Tibetans, I think it was, used to practice bilocation.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct about that, or do you know?
Well, I think so, and I don't want to sound too far out, but I've had several instances where people have told me that they have seen me standing in a room in another country, and at the same time that I'm here. So I think those things are possible, and I think that as we grow and develop spiritually, we'll be able to develop more of those type of powers, and to be able to exercise them.
Well,
in fact, that makes life worth living for me.
Can you kind of give us a rough idea which one of these areas you talk about quite a bit in your book? I mean, do you actually specify things like bilocation, astral projection, or anything else for that matter, topic-wise?
Well, what I'm talking about primarily in this book is the nature of man, and the universal mind, and some of the principles like correspondence, as above, so below, vibration, polarity, things of that nature, cause and effect, gender, the astral body and the human aura, things along that line. There is, of course, telepathy, which I believe happens.
Some of the things that I heard you mention, I've ran into before in a book put out by the three initiates called The Kabbalion. I was wondering, have you ever heard of that book?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, now in that book, they go down this list of 7 things about God. I don't know how much of that you're familiar with or not, but it sounds to me that you do actually have some familiarity, because you talked about polarity, you talked about gender. What are some of the other things? Okay, you said the nature of God.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us real quick what the nature of God is?
Well, first I'll tell you what I feel, and again, I'm couching this just in my own perspective, but
sure.
I would say first what I think God is not is an anthropomorphic, that word of course means man-like figure sitting on a throne somewhere in space.
With a lightning bolt poised.
Yeah, throwing out lightning bolts and sending tornadoes up through the Midwest so that people can thank God that although their home was destroyed and half their loved ones were killed, they're thanking God for the blessing that their dog was spared. I don't believe that there's a God like that. I think that type of figure, which is the common figure seemingly shown in or visualized in most of the religions of the world, I believe that man has created God in their own image. That's why we have, in many cases, a God. Well, in the Christian Bible, you have a God of wrath, jealousy, anger, punishment, retribution, greed, and on it goes. These are qualities of human nature, and I believe that is a God that men have made in their own image. I think if you're going to use the term God, I prefer the term the All, capital A-L-L. I feel if we're going to call this God, I don't particularly feel, good with that term, but the All, or God, is a universal, omnipresent spirit, force, energy, maybe a thought form. It is an energy that surrounds and interpenetrates everything, everything, and that would be God. And within this energy field of the All are these characteristics like polarity and rhythm and all these other factors. So,
quite literally, the source.
The source. That's a good term. Whatever term you want to label it with. I don't know. For all we know, we may just be some little molecule, because if you get into and this I don't have in the book, but it's some understanding I received rather recently, and that's the relativity of size. If you see an ant crawling across the floor, he looks tiny, relatively speaking, but he wouldn't even know if we stepped on him. It's probably about the situation that we're in. But from his perspective, he may be a giant to some other tinier creature. But I think that we are just simply molecules or some type of creature. I've wondered recently if maybe the human beings are some type of virus. Maybe that's why we have the space program. We're trying to infect the whole universe. It's just speculation. But I don't envision God as a man-like figure. In fact, I believe that the universal energy is gender neutral, contained within the universal energy field. are both male and female parts, because that's necessary to the generation and creation of new things. So. Hello?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I do apologize for that. I needed to cough a second ago, and I muted so I wouldn't interrupt the show, and I forgot to turn it back on.
That's okay.
But, yeah, I was going to say that, you know, from my end, it seemed to me like you would actually have to have a male and female principle for God, if God is spirit or energy, because in the case of energy, without a positive and a negative, there's two dead cells there. They have to have one to spark the other, in other words. So
Exactly.
You'd have to have male and female to make it work. This is why they got male and female connectors on plugs.
Exactly. And it's necessary to create something new or to make something additional. You have to have those two polarities. That's part of it. That's in the book I have, is gender. Within the universal energy field are the two polarities of male and female. We have them in ourselves, although, you know, I want to consider myself a big macho man, but there are feminine qualities in there, and they are, you might be a biker out there with bugs on your teeth, but you still have got some feminine qualities, because that's just part of the human makeup.
Especially as far as the energy goes. But, yeah, I've often thought of God, myself, as a being with the ability to separate itself and inject itself into matter, kind of like creating individuality while he's doing it, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yes.
And kind of like he's living and existing through us by being a part of each and every one of us. That sound a little crazy?
No, and this idea that most people seem to have, or at least people I've talked to, is you want to reach God, so you think up and you think out, and he's out there. You want to bring him into your life. Well, he's already here. He's already here, and this negates too the idea of heaven and hell, because if you look from the scientific perspective at the Earth, which is a ball that's rotating counterclockwise, we're standing somewhere on the side of that ball, being held in place by something no one seems to understand, which is gravity. And we don't have to try to pray to reach something out there. We're enmeshed. Well, in fact, I think the Bible says in him, which it should be in it, we live and move and have our being.
Yes, the Apostle Paul said that.
Yeah, he's in us, and we're in it, and it's just, it permeates our being, and it interpenetrates everything else. So, he's here right now in my office, and he's right there in your studio, and for those that are listening now, they're surrounded and penetrated by it also. It's a universal energy field. I think of it sometimes as a mind stuff, or a mind form, and that gets back again too.
Kind of like mental?
Yeah, it's just like maybe this is a big mind that we're in, a big thought form that, in fact, a lifetime might seem a long time to you and I, and yet it could just be less than a blink of an eye as far as the thought goes, because when we're gone, we're just gone. And I don't want any memorials to me. I'm just gone and out of this sheath that we live in.
Right. And, you know, there's a lot of people that, well, they go to church and, like you say, they look for God to be on the outside as a form of angry God, looking to punish everybody that steps out of line. But, you know, if you ask me, this part makes very little sense, because you create good and evil, then why would you not expect evil to be manifested?
Well, sure. And in the principle of polarity, at one end you would have good, and the other end you have evil. And you can see someone that you say, well, how did those Secret Service men go to Colombia and get a bunch of prostitutes? Well, they're living with polarity. They might have gone all spit shine and ready to be a good Secret Service man, but the polarity just swings, and there's the good and the evil back and forth. It's just part of our nature.
Are you still there, Thomas?
I'm still here, but I'm hearing squeaking on the line.
I thought that was in your background over at where you're at.
No, not at all. This room is quiet.
I wonder where that's coming from then.
Well, I'm not hearing it now.
Okay, that was a little strange, but okay, let's keep going.
I just looked here at the chat line. La Turisti says, we are one, we are God, and God is us. Exactly so. It is in us, we're in it. In fact, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that you have to get the right slant on this. It's quite deep, actually. I am that I am. I am that I am. In other words, we are. It's not that I'm God, but I'm part of God. The spirit, the energy field, it's all intertwined. So we do indeed have it, the all-present spirit, the omnipresent spirit, all around us and in us, and it's here now, and it will be here always. We just, in it, we live and move and have our being. So we're like fish that are swimming in the great ocean of the energy field. We're just like fish in that ocean of the energy field. So,
right. Okay. Well, I tell you what, while you were talking and I was listening there, I happened to have a copy of the Kabbalion on my hard drive. Actually, I uploaded it to my website, and I just went ahead and pulled it up and linked to it because it's kind of goes hand in hand with your book, and I thought it would help out with the flow of conversation here, so I hope you didn't mind that.
Not at all.
But here's one of the things that it says. These are the 7 Hermetic principles from Hermes Trismegistus, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but I'm sure you know who I'm speaking of. They also called them Thoth, I believe. Okay, the first one was the principle of mentalism, which you and me were just talking about. Mm-hmm. And earlier you mentioned the principle of correspondence, I think, didn't you?
Yes.
And this also mentions the principle of vibration.
Yes.
And the principle of polarity.
Yes.
And the principle of rhythm.
Principle of, yes, rhythm. Uh-huh.
And the principle of cause and effect. And the principle of gender. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the same subjects that you were, I think, wanting to talk about in your book, and maybe some more as well as that. And I'm pretty sure you got a different way you explain it than what's here. But I pulled it up, like I say, because it was relevant. And I put a link to it in the chat room in case you wanted, or some of the other people. Now, I do apologize to everybody that my chat room does not hyperlink. You have to copy and paste it. But that's a pre-made script, and I don't have any control over how they got it designed, unfortunately. But one of the first principles here goes into talking about God being the mental creation of the all, the subject of the laws created in things, and that the universe as a whole and its parts or units has its existence in the mind of the all. And what I'm getting from this, and Thomas, you could probably help me clarify this, is that God is mental, He's the all, He's everything, and He's existing as the all and inside of all at the same time. Mm-hmm. Am I sounding like I'm on track there?
I think so. You're not derailed yet.
Being all and in all. He's everything that makes everything exist, and He's also inside of everything that makes everything exist. And that's part of what I think what you were talking about earlier is what you were trying to get to. Am I correct?
Yes. Do you feel it's a he?
Well, no, it's not that I feel that. It's just that I was brought up in an atmosphere where it was used quite a lot, and it became a very big habit.
I know. I wrote a novel called Pentecostal Psycho.
Yeah, I know you did that. And you know what's really funny about that? My dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and for a while I was a Pentecostal Sunday school teacher.
Well, I had some
and my kids will tell you they think I'm
in
psycho.
California years ago. But, yeah.
Yeah, but when I use the term he, I don't actually mean anything by it at all. It's just a force of habit because I was raised under fundamentalism and in a habit of it.
I'm just pulling your leg a little bit, that's all.
But, you know, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, though, I think also about the fact that, you know, it's like God is able to be one whole or, you know, lots of little units at the same time. In other words, it's pretty much a matter of God's choice, much like the ocean can be one big body of water, or it can be a multitude of drops of water.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, too, that we err when we ascribe human emotions and human thinking to the all. I'm not sure at all. I mean, we're back by doing that to this man-like being that we've envisioned in our mind. It's hard to separate that. But I think, too, that human beings we put too much importance on ourselves, where in reality, as far as this universal energy field that we call God or it or he or whatever, I think we're just one tiny small part of it, and I don't think humans are quite as important as we'd like to think we are. And
we're a small piece of the big ocean or a small piece of the jigsaw.
Exactly. Maybe one of the drops that you were talking about. And for this reason, you know, we say things and we say, how could God allow such a thing?
Well, see, that leads me to another question that, well, to me it's interesting. When you read your Bible, in not Deuteronomy, but in Leviticus chapter 18, it talks about all these different things that's unlawful to do, amongst them homosexuality. Other places in the Bible, nudity is a law. But these all sound to me like man-made morals like you're talking about earlier. And the reason being, I feel this way is, what if this thing is right and God is everything and in everything and what he's doing is living and existing? Then what if he wanted to experience everything, including nudity or homosexuality or, you know, something the other else? I'm just coming up with, different, possibility. But what a part of what he's wanting to do is experience a little bit of all of that. Then why would he make it a sin if that was the case?
Well, I think that much of the Old Testament prohibitions and laws were, of course, we know they were all man-made, but they were used as a way to try to regulate and control a primitive nation that was primarily living out in the desert. So people were being stoned for gathering up sticks on the Sabbath day, and if you looked at your neighbor's wife the wrong way, you might, God knows what might happen to you.
Now, actually, that second one about the wife still goes today.
Yeah, it does. And yet
Yeah, but you made an excellent point right there. If you get stoned just for picking up sticks on the Sabbath, what does that really say? I mean, could a creator of everything really care what day of the week you picked up sticks on?
Especially when you consider that our calendars are all man-made. They're just a convenient thing. If I asked my dog or cat, or tried to notice the difference in my dog and cat between Monday and Sunday, they don't have any concept. These are just man-made things. And so we use one calendar. The Mayans, of course, had another one, and people are all worried about, they call it 2012. It's just like they had to end that calendar someplace. But, I mean, they just couldn't make it go on forever. I'm thinking back to the year 2000 where all these computers were supposed to crash and just nothing happened. But the calendars are man-made. The prohibitions in the Bible are man-made, in my view. There's such a vast difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and yet it's supposed to all be the same God. who is operating this whole charade, and it's all man-made, and so men consequently have devised. It's a means of control. I guess the Old Testament was an Orwellian form of government back then, trying to control people's lives. And,
well, I don't know.
I don't think the energy field cares. I don't think it cares. We have things like the law of cause and effect. We know that certain actions will bring reactions and all, but a lot of the prohibitions, if we're down to talking about the Bible, are just are man-made, and in my view, are sometimes rather ridiculous.
Well, those same laws didn't really apply everywhere. A lot of them only applied mostly, at least back then, to monotheistic adherents, places like Judaism or Islam, or someone that was really, I think Zoroastrianism and Mithraism, maybe in some of those. But there were plenty of other places that did not go with that, and these people really had to worship more than one God, but they weren't as strict about some of the other stuff either.
Exactly. I just noticed the thing here about Jesus was gay, Alexander the Great was gay.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, who said Jesus was gay?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't there. But, he never put the moves on me because I wasn't there. So, I don't know. But at any rate, I think this, gay or straight so-called thing is just, again, the manifestation of the gender. We all have those two tendencies within us. It's part of human beings. So maybe if my feminine gets the best of me, I'd become gay or whatever. I don't think the universe cares, frankly.
I was going to ask two things. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize for that. One of them being, is there something like a door opening and shutting on your end, or is that on the line again?
I don't hear anything. No.
Okay. Well, somebody said they heard it in the chat room, and I hear it, and I'd have no clue what's going on unless I got a ghost in my system or something, or there's a ghost on the line somewhere.
I'm going to turn my air conditioning off. Maybe but that's the constant humming.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that was it.
Are we allowed to smoke on the
Well, why wouldn't you be?
I'm just kidding.
Now, I was wondering, though.
They're banning it everywhere. I thought maybe on an internet program you can't smoke there.
Really? Okay. I tell you what, though, I heard actually that a lot of people are going along now letting you smoke in public places if you're smoking an e-cigarette.
Well, those are supposed to be worse for you than the real thing.
That's not what I heard, but I guess it depends on where you're hearing it at.
Yeah. Well, whatever I'm smoking tobacco right now. So anyway.
All right. Well, what can you tell us about the principle of correspondence?
Okay. The principle of correspondence has to do with, I'm sure you've heard the statement in some of the ancient writings, as above, so below. The principle of correspondence has to do with if something is in place here, it's probably in place on a larger scale. Okay? If I can state that clearly, I'm having a little trouble trying to express myself clearly here, but let me see.
It's okay. Take your time.
Well, I put here in the book, there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes, as above, so below, as below, so above. Understanding this enables us to solve many paradoxes and hidden secrets of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principles of correspondence to them, we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknown to us. This principle is of universal application on the various planes of the material, mental and spiritual universe. Okay, I was reading that from my book, but it's there is a correspondence or an agreement between different planes. If I'm making that clear or not.
Right, like different dimensions or...
Yeah, there's a harmony and agreement and correspondence between the planes because they all emanate from the same source. We divide the universe into three classes of planes known as the physical, the mental, and the spiritual plane. And these, they're more or less artificial and arbitrary, but it's just the principle, as above, so below, and as below, so above. So we can often gain some insight into metaphysical things by applying that principle of correspondence.
Okay. So, and it probably applies to more than one thing. It's kind of universal, can be used in many different fashions.
Yes, and it can help us to relate to or understand, I think, some of the things that might be going on a higher plane. I think I'm making a mess of this right now.
I don't think so. You don't sound like you are to me, but I'm not a writer.
No.
Okay, now moving right along, there's also the principle of vibration. And now this in here, I was going to let you tell us a little something about as well. I know that it has to do with the fact that everything is in motion, as I understand it, even the molecules in your dining room table, the chair you're sitting on, even though you're not aware of the fact they're moving. Is that correct?
Yes, everything's in motion. Nothing's at rest. I mean, I wouldn't recommend banging your head against the wall. I mean, it's going to definitely not be a good thing to do, but the fact is that wall itself is vibrating because of the molecular structure there. Nothing's at rest. Everything moves, vibrates, circles. Even, well, the science endorses that. This was something that was understood by some of the masters of ancient Egypt and the Greek philosophers. There is a vibration and movement in everything. Well, everything's changing. That's what it has to do again with this non-existence of time, because nothing grows old, it just changes because everything's vibrating. Now the all, or what we were calling God, it, he, or whatever, that manifests a constant vibration that is so rapid it's practically at rest. But everything around us is vibrating. And we can, if we can plug into that, sometimes it can help us to do things spiritually. If we can get hooked into the vibration that's going on. All
this
particles.
Could be how the Egyptians was able to move large stones for the pyramids, maybe, do you think?
Very
By
possibly so.
understanding these principles and using them to their advantage, knowing how to manipulate them?
I think they were doing something besides whipping the backs of some poor slaves as they were grunting to move them. Yeah, I think they had some things working there that we still don't know about. But all particles of matter, from atoms to suns, they're all moving around in a circular movement. Everything is revolving counterclockwise. We revolve around the sun's moving around, the solar system's moving around a larger system, and everything around us is vibrating. And I think that, yes, the ancient Egyptians might have been able to harness some of those things very well in order to move objects, stones. Maybe it's also at Easter Island, also maybe at Stonehenge. I'm sure that something was operating there because, you know, really, Royce, the five senses we have are so limited in what we can perceive. They're very, very limited. And
I have no doubt of that in my military mind, as they used to say.
Yeah.
I've been shown in my lifetime how limited it is, to be honest with you, but, it's the sort of thing that kind of catches up to you by surprise. One of the things we was going to talk about also, I thought, would be the principle of polarity, that everything is dual, everything has pole, and everything has its pair of opposites, which that's another one. We were talking earlier about energy. It has poles, and, electricity could not exist without the opposite poles of electricity. We were talking about that. Mm-hmm. Temperature, it has to have hot and cold in order to be able to make warm. Otherwise, it's going to all be hot, all be cold. Without that polarity to contrast, how do you really actually have creation? So I was wondering what you could tell us about your take on polarity.
Well, on polarity, I feel that, you mentioned heat and cold. There's darkness, there's light. The thing about polarity is everything has to operate along its own polarity. Everything has two sides, two poles, and two opposites.
In the mid-range or a middle area.
Yeah, you can't take darkness and contrast it with a bad smell. They're different polarities. Okay, even the spirit and matter has two poles. And there's intermediate
matter, antimatter, Christ, Antichrist.
Yeah, and there's
that means there has to be an anti-devil too. Well, Christ would be the anti-devil, I guess.
Well, if we're going to get down to making man-like figures again, I guess so. But
yeah, if you want to get down to making man, good point.
Yeah, I think we all have remnants of these ideas that were part of the thinking of the human race in its infancy, and still dominates the thinking of a lot of people today. But I don't think there's any personal devil, and I don't think there's any personal God that are man-like figures. I don't envision a devil with a swirling red tail. I think that we have negative and positive energies. We have polarities that go from, I guess you could even say good to bad, or our concept thereof. But I don't think that you're going to get anything that's not involved in a polarity. You can have you have polarities in your own makeup. You go from violent anger to peace and love. I'm thinking of one particular person that this lady often gets on the internet and rants and raves very angrily against someone, and then caps it off by saying blessings to all. Peace and love to all.
No, they don't think about it. Isn't she really just applying the law of the principle of rhythm?
I think she's just switching along the lines of polarity between hatred and love back and forth very quickly. So everything's on a polarity, and you can have good mood, bad mood, light, dark, hot, cold.
And everything in between.
And everything in between. And then shades in between. When you go along the polarity between hot and cold, what do you have in the middle? It's lukewarm. It's a blending of the two. So, polarity's definitely there all the time. So.
And now for the one I was just making the joke about, rhythm. Everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, and all things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left, and it compensates. Kind of like that lady a minute ago, you was talking about her would 1 minute bless, the next minute curse. In other words, she went from one, because in rhythm, now correct me if I'm wrong about my understanding, isn't it really about the effect of the swing from one pole to the other pole?
Yeah, it's like a pendulum, and this is true too, what we were talking about earlier about the rise and fall of nations. The pendulum swings. It swings from one extreme to the other, and then it always swings back. So it's just swinging back. I think right now in this country we are basically swinging back, and whether there'll be anything left to swing back to for the good, I'm not sure at this point. But let's not get into politics, okay? So, but,
I'm not exactly a big favorite of politics anyway.
I'm not either. So, but with the polarity now, if you can get tied into that sometimes, let's take that lady for an example. If you can rise a little above that swinging back and forth, you can tend to neutralize some of the polarity. And that can be done by sometimes by mental effort, because thought itself has a big effect, and it has lingering effects. When we think of something, that thought is actually, it has some substance to it in a spiritual way, and the effects of that thought can be used not just in telepathy, but just the effects of thought, which can be manifested in the way we conduct ourselves toward other people, and those thoughts can be lingering for some time after they're over and after we're gone. So,
and personally, from my experience, thoughts can crystallize. They can become material forms.
I think so. Yes. Yeah,
so
I agree.
You really got to watch out. Got to watch out for what you think, and that leads us up to the next principle, the principle of cause and effect. And this one here, I don't know about you, Tom, but this one for me, it's a very big key to creation. I mean, you're using the actual principle of cause to end up with an effect, and thus have your creation. Am I correct?
Well, sure. Every cause has an effect. Now, if I suddenly get really nasty on this phone call, and I begin screaming at you and calling you vile names and making all kinds of untrue accusations, there's going to be an effect for that. One of which will be I won't be asked back here again. But
well, one of might be that the guests may not want to hear you again, or the listeners, I mean.
But cause and effect, yeah. Now, for example, I wrote a book not too long ago called The Drum Circle Murders. It was a fictional novel about murders that were taking place within some drum circles in the Tampa Bay area. Certain people bought and read that book, and they became outraged because they thought they saw themselves in that book. So that book was a cause, and it had quite an effect. It had such an effect that they were putting terrible reviews on Amazon. I finally pulled the books off of there. There were two of them. I pulled them off because the cause of that was the books, and the effect was this anger. But now it's swinging back the other way. So, yeah, cause and effect. It's I guess in the Bible would be you reap what you sow. But yeah, there's always going to be an effect. So that's why it's a good idea to.
You know, interesting thing is, I was talking to my son just this morning about this very same principle, and I was telling him, my oldest son, that I don't care if it's something you think, something you say, something you do, it really matters not. All things will eventually have an effect on one plane or one place or another, whether it only be in your thought life or in the physical plane or the emotional plane or somewhere. Everything that's done is going to have a thought, a cause, it's going to have an effect somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, because thoughts themselves are a vibration. And if you're thinking thoughts of anger and hatred towards someone, those thoughts have a vibration. And they're going to go out and they're going to have an effect. You might not see the effect. You might say, well, I don't see anything happen. But there's going to be some type of a vibrational effect that's put forth. Now that depends too upon the strength, I think, of someone's will and how developed they are mentally. If all you do is shop at Walmart and watch Looney Tunes, you're probably not concentrating very much. you're a wall Martian or something, you're not going to be probably exercising your concentrated will. But for those that are working on themselves and trying to develop themselves mentally, and developing a strong form of concentration and will, which is quite necessary, really, if you're going to do like creative visualization and positive affirmations, for example. Let's say you decide, well, I'm going to build this into the biggest, what do we call this, an online radio show?
Right.
Into the biggest online radio show, and you sit and you visualize that, and you make positive affirmations for it, then you're concentrating the vibrational effects of your thoughts and your will on that, and you see thoughts can be, when they're properly channeled, like a mold. And if you can hold a particular thought concentrated positively, it's like a mold, and if you can hold that long, not in one session, but if you can hold that mold, eventually you're going to find the energy pouring into that mold, and you're going to see things suddenly materialize. That's just the way it works. So that in a form, I guess that's cause and effect. The cause being that you're concentrating on something. The other side of the coin and the other end of the polarity is we have some people apparently that spend a good deal of their time mulling over the past, what they feel might be past wrongs, and hating and hating and hating. Well, those thoughts are going to be filled with something in the future too. I saw in the news tonight there's a serial killer in this area that has been, he's going up to the fourth trial. 26 years ago, he murdered, I think, 3 young women, and he goes to trial. They convict him. They sentence him to execution, and then it's appealed, and he comes back. Well, there are women there, mothers and all, and understandably so, in the courtroom that are full of hatred and anger toward him. Rightly so, understandably so. But they've made their whole life around visualizing his destruction, which they may all die of old age before this is over. But we can hold a lot of different thoughts in our mind, and some of them aren't always profitable. That's why, since really the past doesn't exist, my recommendation is just let go of it. Hit the delete button in your head and move forward.
Right, which makes a lot of sense. Now, something's happened in the last few minutes that when I speak, I hear myself through the speaker over there, and I don't know why. Wait a minute, it just stopped. I thought I had an echo going on there for a minute.
Maybe you're developing advanced psychic abilities here. Your mind is speaking back to itself.
That's my mind back talking me.
Yeah.
Gonna have to ground it and send it to the corner.
This might be good. You may go off like a rocket when this is over. Who knows? Well, I got the power now.
Do you by any chance cover mental transmutation?
Say again, please.
Do you by any chance cover mental transmutation?
Transmutation? In the book?
Yeah.
Not as such, no. You're talking about changing things through the power of your mind? So,
right, like,
like
metals, elements may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration.
Well, that's mental alchemy.
Right. Okay.
That we talked about earlier, which the real alchemy in history, the lead and the gold was kind of a cover for the real secret under that, which was transmuting the coarse human nature into finer human nature. That's what real alchemy was about. So, yeah, mental transmutation. Hopefully, I guess all of us that are on this show now are working on ourselves trying to do that, because we want to advance and improve and understand. And, the more I listen to myself talk, the more I realize how little I know.
Right.
We just keep trying.
Now, on your book, The Headhunters, You said you pulled that one out of print temporarily. When do you think it's going to go back in?
Well, what I did, I pulled it off because of all the hatred it had generated. It was kind of a sequel to the Drum Circle Murders, which I just republished that today with Amazon under the name of Foul Play. But the Headhunter book is a horror story about people being decapitated. So it's pretty heavy duty unless you're into horror. It's a bad one.
So I take it a lot of people were worried about what their kids reading about something too graphic?
No, they were, excuse the expression, pissed off with me about the Drum Circle Murder book and the fact this was a sequel to it, because it continues on with two sheriff's detectives that were the main focus of the characters in the first book, and so those two detectives are the main focus as they try to solve these crimes in the second book. So I am going to redo that manuscript, give it a different name, and republish it again, and hope it stays off the radar screen of some of these people that really need to get in the better polarity mentally.
So, but when do you think you'll be putting it back out in the future?
I think probably within a week or two.
Well, that's fast, isn't it?
Well, I have the manuscript, and all I have to do is go through and change the name and go through and do a little re-editing, and then it's ready to go again, because it's already been published. It's just a matter of making some changes. So it's not like I'm writing another book. It's just redoing the present manuscript. So.
Well, it looks to me like you got more than one book out there. You got Foul Play. It only cost $1. Revenge of the Simians. Hallucinations, Descent into Madness. Bugged, Dark Transformations. Mavis and the Painted Ladies. Mavis and the Atlantean Connection. And Pentecostal Cycle. That sounds like that could be possibly interesting, especially since I was, Pentecostal. And of course, there's the one I called you about, Mystery of the Multiverse of Mind. And what I'm noticing about this is, the one I'm talking to you about tonight's really a little different from what you usually write about. You normally tend to write about horror, don't you?
That or supernatural subjects. Now, the book Pentecostal Psycho is actually a fact-based, fictionalized story. I spiced it up with a few things just, to make it a little more interesting, but it's based on a lot of things that I saw and experienced in California many years ago in some of the Pentecostal churches. So it exposes some of the hypocrisy that goes on there, and that's what that's about. Yes, this book is a little different, and by the way, this book is being used as a textbook in California by some Rosicrucian group out there that's studying it. It's been a good seller, this Mysteries of the Multiverse of Mind. It's a small little book. It's not very big, but it's different than what I've normally written, because usually I'll just get an idea and make up a story. This book, it only cost $1. That's a supernatural type story that deals with alternate dimensions that are imaginary. So,
now, do I remember correctly? This book was on sale at Amazon on Kindle for like what, $2.99?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's. I wanted to make it inexpensive so people could buy it, and I had hoped might benefit from it.
Which people have a Kindle, they could take it with them to work, school, or anywhere they're at, where they want to be, where they might want to read at, or like if they're at a bus stop or whatever.
Absolutely. I love the Kindle because I have both the Kindle and then the new Kindle Fire, but the Kindle itself has a talking ability. So if you buy a book on Kindle, most of them are speech enabled. So I like to take my Kindle in the car with me and just turn the voice on, and it will read a book to me while I'm driving, which is pretty amazing. And I was asking my London ebook publisher, Stuart Howland, over in England, how do they do this? Because he's a webmaster. How do they do this? I just got this book published and it's already speech enabled. I was picturing some man or woman just sitting there reading the book, and he said, no, it's done with a machine. I said, well, that's way beyond me. I don't understand how that can be done. But
I'm not sure how they do it either, but they got some really, fantastic technology out there. A little bit beyond my scope, I can tell you that. But I was going to say was, do you have anything new you're working on that you'd like to tell my listeners about?
I don't have a novel started at the moment. No, I'm going to get this Headhunters book redone and get it stuck back out there in print or with Nook, Barnes & Noble Nook, or with Amazon. And then I'm always saying, well, I'm waiting for my muse to arrive. So this would be some imaginary anthropomorphic female figure that walks in my office and gives me some inspiration. But she hasn't been around much the last month. I've been going through all this problem with the other books. So.
Well, nobody wants to go through problems. They got to. They don't have a choice, but they don't want to.
We all have problems, yeah. But I try to look on problems. This is a way that the universe shapes us. If, in fact, human nature-wise, you always feel a little bit good when you see some multimillionaire that's having problems. You think, well, see, it happens to everybody. So.
I read on Yahoo News just today that a lottery winner that was a millionaire was going to jail because she kept getting her food stamps.
I saw that, yeah. Well, I guess in this society you take what you can get.
Of course, her problem she brought on herself, but
cause and effect, brother.
It was amusing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's cause and effect.
Okay. So you don't have any forums or do a workshop or anything like that?
I have not been. I do an occasional book signing in this area. I go to a writers group in Clearwater, Florida, every other week, and that's about the extent of it now. I wouldn't mind doing that. There's nothing. It's a little difficult in this area. This is not the most spiritual or intellectual area to live in, I'll have to say.
Well, I think that's because we're in the South, and it's kind of hard to be in the Bible Belt and have spirituality when it's being overrun by religion. Yeah,
I try to be a good old boy, Royce, and I try to blend right in, but they just don't seem to. I just don't look right. But I try.
I'm actually not that far from you. I'm right here in Houston, Texas.
Oh, you're in Houston?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I'm in that same little South.
We have a problem, Houston. Yeah, okay. So,
I'm it. No.
Are you getting hit with any tornadoes? Didn't they have tornadoes there recently? Or?
They said Texas was going to get hit. But we never saw any.
Yeah.
At least not us. Somebody else in Texas might have.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We've been on this here for just a little over an hour now. And like I told you before the show started, it's still school season till the end of May. And we seem to have, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty much covered everything.
I think so.
So I was going to suggest, because, I've enjoyed having you, that we go ahead and do a wrap for tonight's show, but see if maybe somewhere down the road, maybe when you get your Headhunters book back on the market or whatever, if you'd like to come back and talk to us again.
Be my pleasure to do so, Royce. I've enjoyed talking with you all.
Okay, well, I've enjoyed you having you on here, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect talking with you, but I'm going to stay hooked up to the show for about 2 or 3 more minutes while I talk about some links on my site and my upcoming shows and that. Some last-minute things I want to tell my listeners before I sign off for the night. And I want to thank you once again for coming on my show. It really has been a pleasure. You're a very interesting man, and I think you got a top-notch book, and I hope that the show helps it do well.
I thank you very much, Royce. Pleasure's been all mine, and look forward to meeting you again down the road.
Okay, doke. You have a good one.
Okay, bye.
Okay, everybody. Now, back to the other thing that I was talking about. First thing, let me check, make sure I didn't I still seem to be registering, so that's good. Want to let everybody know that I will be live on the air tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'm having a special show for a guy that I rescheduled from Saturday that we made a mistake on. So that's going to be tomorrow. If you scroll down and look at the description below, tonight's guest, you'll see him. It's Rupert Matthews, Mysterious Yorkshire. And I also wanted to ask him about Roswell, and it should be an interesting show, and I hope to see everybody there. I wanted to remind everybody not to forget to go to the menu on the left and to click on Friends and visit our friends at the other social networks if y'all are interested in meeting other people with a like mind. There's Alien and UFO Community, there's Supernatural UFO, and there's United Paranormal International, where I'm a member at all three, and I would personally recommend these places to other people. And then there's some radio shows under Radio Favorites that I would also recommend to other people. UKPN Radio, the host is Gary Brown. Jim Harold Radio, The Gradian Report with Micah Hanks, and Ohio Politics with Mark Hamill, I think is his name. And those are all pretty good shows. They got great hosts. I think you guys will really enjoy it if you check them out. Just click on them links. And on the upper right-hand side in a little block says World UFO Today. They're going to be celebrating UFO Day once again this July. Feel free to stop by there and check them out. And don't forget to visit me tomorrow. I also want to let you know there will be no shows Saturday because I've promised my son that I would attend his karate tournament. And I've already rescheduled that guest for next Wednesday at 1, by the way. And I want to thank you guys for coming. I couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without my guests. With that, I'm going to sign off and go meet with my wife and spend some time with her before I go to sleep. Good night, everybody.